Good afternoon if you're in Melbourne, good morning if you're in Brisbane, and whatever time you are, welcome to another Tech Leaders live stream. This is the place where I like to share my mentors and my coaches with you, the people that I go to when I need help. If it's your first time, I'm Andrew Murphy. I'm the founder and head geek at Tech Leaders Launchpad, and these are regular live streams we do to talk about the topics of technology leadership. You may be like me, where you've moved into leadership without being given the skills and the training you need to succeed, and this is one of the many ways that I try and help people in that situation, because I was that person many years ago. I spent 15 years trying to be a better leader, and I want to share my experiences and my mentors and coaches with you. Our topic today is on exactly that. It's on scaling your impact. How can you mentor, coach, and develop the people in your team? And with me, I've got two excellent people. First of all, I've got Loren. Loren, do you want to tell us who you are, where you're coming in from, and what you do?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Andrew. Hi, I am Loren. I am currently team engineering lead of the accessibility team at Canva. I am a relatively new, official manager, air quotes, maybe about 18 months experience in total. But I have a bit of a varied background. I was trained as a mechatronic engineer, did some AI, ML academic research, but I've been a consultant at ThoughtWorks as a software engineer, a delivery lead, freelance, had a stint at freelance as an engineer and an accessibility consultant. But relating more to kind of the topic, I have given mentoring talks at conferences about how to give and receive feedback, and I am absolutely a huge fan of talking about feedback as much as possible as a really powerful tool. But I love feedback culture. I learned about it at ThoughtWorks, and I have been reading books like Radical Candor and a bunch of engineering management books and podcasts as well. So that's kind of my experience with the topic today. I have a lot of experience with mentoring from running meetups around women in tech, and I also help with a CTO school meetup for maybe the last 8 or 9 years. So have a few things to hopefully share about that. That's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Loren. You need to give us a list of all of the books and podcasts and stuff. I think we need to share these around. I think let's get like a resources list at some point. With us today, we've also got Dr. Dan Prager. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks for having me. My current role is as Director of Coaching and Learning at Everest Engineering, and I'm here at Everest HQ in sunny Melbourne, broadcasting live with, I'm not sure how audible my colleagues are in the background. But thanks for the doctor appellation. Once upon a time, I was a mathematician and scientist, but I got out of academia early on and have had a really varied career around software development, leadership, agile coaching, other forms of coaching and facilitation. So it's all coming into a bit of a blend at the moment. I do coaching, facilitation, organize workshops, and have very, views on what makes for really good interactive workshops, influenced by my passion of learning martial arts in a collaborative and hands-on kind of setting, and like to bring some of that to my workshop approach, even when it's remote, as we are today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And actually, in a month or so's time, you and I are going to talk about exactly that topic in an embodied leadership one-on-one. We've just you and I. That's going to be really exciting. That's going to be what we end the calendar year with. If it's your first time to one of these live streams, we try and make these pretty interactive. Please ask us questions in the chat. We will bring those questions up to talk about. I've got a bunch of stuff that we're going to use to kick off our conversation. But the best way this works for you as viewers is if you ask us your questions and we respond to them. Our goal here is not just to have you listen to us talk for 60 minutes. It's to actually have you actively learn from our experiences and the things that we've done, the mistakes that we've made. And the best way to do that is for you to ask us questions. And starting off with some pre-prepared questions, let's have a bit of fun for the first one. What was your favorite tech gadget that isn't your computer? I'll give you my answer first. If you have got a fun answer, chat, please put it in, and we'll bring it up on screen. Mine is I have a solar powered chicken coop. So my wife said to me that she wanted to have chickens, and I said to her, "Okay, as long as you get up at 5 a.m. and open the door." To which she responded, "No, as long as you get up at 5 a.m. and open the door." So we decided that neither of us were going to be responsible chicken owners unless I took my technical experience to the problem. And so my chicken coop has solar panels and a Raspberry Pi. It checks what time the sun sets and raises every day and automatically closes and opens the door. So I suppose you could say the Raspberry Pi is a tiny little computer, but the rest of it is an automated setup. Loren, do you want to tell us yours?
Yeah, mine's probably a reflection of my hobbies. Making pancakes. I have to make quite a few for the fam on a weekend morning ritual. So my favorite gadget at the moment is, and this is embarrassing because of studying robotics at uni, is actually a temperature measuring heat gun. Is that what they're called? Infrared temperature measuring gun. Because I have like 3 saucepans, frying pans going at once, but they're all different temperatures. So I've stuffed up pancakes a bunch of times. So I have to measure. I found measuring with the heat gun has been a really awesome hack for getting all the pancakes out at the right, at a consistent pancake experience. So that's my fun gadget at the moment.
It's so nerdy, and I am absolutely in love with it. I think I need to get one myself. Dan, what was your favorite tech gadget that isn't your computer?
Yeah, I'm not using it at the moment, but I've had a couple of heart surgeries because I was born with a bung valve, and often the recovery is long and difficult. And after my latest one, I was told for the first few months, you're not allowed to let your heart rate go over 130, which is ludicrously low when you're trying to do any form of exercising. And I'm not very good at just taking my pulse in the old-fashioned way. So I got myself a Fitbit with heart rate measurement, went for what I thought was a slow jog, and found that like just halfway around Noble, and found my heart rate was up at 150. And then went through this process of learning what my body was telling me and starting to correlate that. So I guess I'm a bit of a fan of biofeedback type devices. Who knows where to go next with that one? Anyone into brainwaves can give recommendations in the chat.
I love that idea of like trying to understand your body, because often a lot of us can have this disconnect where we don't really feel what our body is trying to tell us, and using technology as the bridge to kind of go, actually, this is what's happening. I love that. I love that so much. We've got Shreyas saying, good idea, going to buy one. I'm guessing that was about the infrared thermometer from Loren's example. That's great. Ewan, what about the chicken coming home late from clubbing? Emergency entry. None of my chickens have ever gone clubbing. If they want to go, I will be a responsible parent, and I will pick them up and take them home afterwards. I have zero problems with that. And we've got light bulb voice controlled with an Arduino circuit. Do I want to ask Omar what you have to say to turn the light bulb off and on? I'm not sure that's going to be a safe for work discussion, so we might leave that one. All right, moving on to the topic we've got today. I like to start these things with what is this thing we're even talking about? If we're talking about scaling or impact, if we're talking about mentoring and coaching, what does it mean? Like, why do we do this? What do the words even mean? Dan, I know you could talk for an hour on this, so I'm going to throw to you first, but let's try and make it a minute or two, not an hour or two.
Awesome. And you can just give me the wind up or some signal, and I'll eventually notice. So mentoring and coaching, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to help others. And I think I'll subscribe to a similar definition that I've heard you use before, Andrew, that mentoring is more the case where the person doing the mentoring takes a bit more of the lead, maybe tells stories or advice from their own experience. Whereas in coaching, the person, the coachee, tends to take the lead, and then the job of the mentor, sorry, the coach, is to hold more space for them to come up with their own solutions, maybe using skills like effective listening, not getting distracted, not planning their own responses, and maybe asking insightful or helpful questions. And of course, we blur the two. It can be horses for courses. If someone's really inexperienced in a particular context, then the mentoring can help get things off. If you're trying to help them build capacity and they've been at this for a while, then the coaching stance is very helpful. And there are some metaphors that can help you, I guess, bootstrap these capabilities from other areas of your life. If you've ever been in some collaborative activity, like in a sporting team or something to do with musical or theatre performance, you've probably had good and bad experiences from the past, and you can learn some do's and don'ts from those. That would be my opening response.
I like those definitions. Yeah, that's good. Loren, anything you want to add to that?
Not too much. I think we've been in the same kind of rooms talking about mentoring and coaching, so my definitions are very similar. I recently learned in the last few years that mentoring is definitely more about listening and sharing personal experiences rather than giving advice, so to speak, or about hypothetical situations. More, when I went through this is what I did. To help give you more data to decide what you want to do in the situation. Your experience may be different, which I found was really powerful and helped with my mentoring a lot. And coaching, I've got engineering manager as my kind of title in this particular stream, but that was because I think it's kind of the most common name for my role. I thought it was maybe a bit more broader audience, but we're actually called coaches at Canva, and so we are there to support and help our coachees, or commonly known as direct reports in maybe other companies. We're there to absolutely support and uplift our coachees. So we will mentoring is just one part of the job. And a big thing about it is changing the coaching style to the style of the team member that you're working with. Everyone is very different and has individual needs and individual styles, and that's been a big part of coaching for me is changing my style depending on what the person needs that I'm working with.
Yeah, it's tough, when you're used to being a certain way and you've got to kind of change the way that you're interacting with somebody. There's a discussion I was having with somebody. This is a bit of a tangent, so I'll probably bring us back in a minute. But I was having this really interesting debate with somebody on the frictions and the conflict between authentic leadership and changing your leadership style to fit the other person, and how those two things are somewhat in conflict. And can you really truly be an authentic leader if you're changing your leadership style? But if you don't change your leadership style, can you truly support the other person? These are the things we have to debate. These are the things we have to think about as leaders. It's one of those things where there's no clear answer with leadership. Often there's a clear answer with engineering, but there just isn't with leadership. I think for me, one of the most really important aspects of mentoring and coaching is why we do it. And that's kind of why I titled this live stream "Scaling Your Impact." Because the main reason why we do coaching and mentoring is because we can't do all the work ourselves. We have to support our team to do things. We have to grow them. We have to develop them. And so that's the only other thing I'd add on top of it is the reason why we do it in the first place is because we want to make sure we're growing and developing our team so that they can solve bigger problems themselves rather than having us have to step in and help all the time. which goes on to our next question. How do we measure the success of coaching and mentoring? It's a really difficult, really difficult question. I know, Loren, in our little pre-brief, you were talking a little bit about your kind of journey through learning this. Can you take us a little bit through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess maybe at least a easier way for me to think about it is like, what is short-term success and what is long-term success? And I don't think that I have the experience, I guess the length of time as an official manager to be able to talk to long-term success, but like just seeing the success of the people that you have worked with and helped over time. And where they've gotten to in their career, and if that's where they want to get to in their career. But in terms of the short term, as a successful coach, the things that I kind of look for is are they enjoying work? Are they happy? Are they yeah, essentially those two things. Are they enjoying work and are they happy, and are they doing things that they want to work on? Is there anything that's causing problems for them? You know, are they meeting the goals that they want to meet? And I do have some thoughts on like career growth and like, I guess, stereotypical ambition career growth in tech. And I think a lot of folks that I've met have kind of like been, oh, I'm not where I want to be in my career yet. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm not a CTO of something, or I'm not a principal engineer, or I'm not a manager, or something like that. Like I really like to talk to folks about like, what do they actually want to do, and is it in software? Maybe it's raising llamas. I don't know, but yeah. Yeah, essentially coming down to effectiveness and happiness are two things that I try to measure with my coachees.
Cool. Dan?
Yeah, I really appreciate Loren's point about short-term versus long-term impact. I think that the real impact is longer term, and hence can be hard to see, or even unexpected. You know, 5 years later you run into someone and you find out about all the knock-on effects, and that's awesome, but difficult to get credit for at the time. In terms of actionable stuff, I think choosing kind of external to the coaching process measures is really good. You know, we're here to coaching, mentoring, same for the purposes of this. We're here to support. I really like the solutions focus tack on this. So solutions focus method. One aspect of that is working with people to establish their own scales. Like if you want to become awesome at, just to take an example, code reviews. I don't necessarily endorse code reviews compared to pair programming, but let's say you're doing code reviews and you go through an exercise of imagine what does a 10 out of 10 code review look like, maybe from the perspective of the person receiving it as well as the giving it, and come up with a list of points. Okay, if that's 10 out of 10, where are you now? You know, maybe it's a 4 or a 5. Okay, and then what are the things that have helped you get that far? Acknowledging those things, maybe you can double down on those, maybe, and get to, you know, a 6 or a 7 by those little steps. Or maybe you're going to have to go further and look for other ideas to try and experiment. So if you want to take that goal lens and measurement lens, then let's set something up. Sometimes there may be external ones that have been courteously provided via OKRs or KPIs. Again, not necessarily endorsing any of these, but once you understand the game that you're playing, to take maybe the sporting analogy, then you can look at what's got you this far and what are the next steps. I think there's a bit of a sidetrack, but there's also worth mentioning that there's also a kind of, there may be an impediment removal angle to look at the sort of the negative space aspect. What are the things that are holding you back, and then, you know, how might those be addressed? Yeah.
Cool.
Uh,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Lorraine, go on.
just your mention of goals as well, Dan, just reminded me as well. Apart from happiness and effectiveness, like impact that they're having and having the impact that they want to have, like helping them through, supporting them on that.
That's great. That segues into Omar's point, getting feedback from the mentees themselves. Yeah, I think that's great, Omar. The people often go into a coaching or mentoring relationship because they got a very clear idea of what they want to achieve, and kind of helping them through that is a really good idea. The only caveat I might add to that is sometimes you get the XY problem with people when you're coaching and mentoring them. They think they want something, but that's not what they actually want. They want something else, and they see that as a way to get it. And it's often the coach specifically. It's often the role of a coach more than a mentor sometimes, to help people realize exactly what it is they want rather than what it is they say they want. So you just have to take sometimes their feedback with a pinch of salt. Often people know what they want, sometimes they don't. Comment from somebody here. Sorry, your name doesn't come through to StreamYard, but I think it's Lloyd. Lloyd is just suggesting maybe when you're mentoring somebody, it's what I've done, and when you're coaching, it's what you will do. That's pretty close to my internal definition. For me to mentor somebody, you've probably got to have done the thing they're trying to achieve. Where to coach them, you don't have to. I think that could be a definition. We've got a question from Andrew coming in. What are some examples of how you mentored and coached more difficult team members, and how did you work with them to overcome it? Lorraine, have you got any experiences you want to share here?
Ooh, I can probably think of difficult situations more than the person themselves. But I might sit on that one and think about it for a little bit if Dan has something more kind of front of mind.
I want to ask. I am having flashbacks, but maybe Andrew can. Andrew Gorgeous. That's how you pronounce your name. Please tell us that as well. What do you mean by difficult? Because that could mean a few different things. Who's saying they're difficult? They're saying I'm a difficult person and I'd like to be coached, or is it their manager or colleagues, or you as coach or mentor?
Yeah, that's such a great point, Dan. Let's put a pin in that question while Andrew types us up his response, and we'll go through to one of the other pre-prepared questions. What are some of the common mistakes first-time leaders can make when it comes to this kind of stuff? Coaching, developing, training, supporting your team to grow, and how can you avoid those mistakes? Dan?
As a first-time manager, coach, leader, if mainly you've been rewarded for your expertise and achievements, it's very tempting to advise, tell, this is what I would do, treat the person, as I don't know, an extra pair of hands rather than a whole person who is on their own journey. The best bit of advice is probably, and a great source is Michael Bungay Stanier, an Australian living in Canada, of be more curious. Listen first. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason, to state all of the cliches. So you're going to want to develop your listening muscles, and then after that, ask clarifying questions and notice how much you're talking and how things are landing. As a very basic stuff. Lorraine?
Yeah, I mean, listening is the number one thing that I was going to say as well. It is very tempting to talk a lot and say what you're going to do, like what you would do in a particular situation, or take over your one-on-ones with your coaches, especially if they are quite a quiet person. And so, kind of fighting that habit of talking and being the person who is the most, I guess, senior engineer on the team, which is usually the case of the transition from engineering to engineering manager. So listening definitely for sure, and I agree with everything that Dan says here. That's a lot of it comes out of that, and like a lot of things get unlocked if you just shut your mouth and ask more questions.
And I think that's the great kind of almost annoying as a recipient, but the power of coaching is trying to ask people questions that change their mind. And if you can ask somebody a question as opposed to making a statement, and they come to a realization themselves, it's way more powerful than if you try and give them information. And it has the brilliant side effect of you learning about them more.
And also, oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in, and also being too ready to jump in to help. I don't know if Dan was about to say that. And giving them the answer similar to what you just said. Actually, probably exactly what you just said, Andrew. I also did a lot of tutoring back at uni, and am kind of helping kids with homework at the moment. So instead of just like telling them what to do, like what would you do in this situation, or even giving people enough rope and enough space if they ask the question, like letting them think about it for a little bit rather than giving them the answer straight away.
Just to go off the uni one, when I was back at uni, I think even doing grad studies, and there were you'd earn a bit of extra cash by running tutorials, and but there was a drop-in class, a maths one, where anyone could drop in with any question. And one of my mates who was also on the tutoring team hated it because he felt that he had to have every answer pre-prepared, so it was a lot of preparation. I, on the other hand, did zero preparation and considered this an asset, because I'd just sort of sit down and go, let's solve this together. And so I felt that this was a much superior approach, not only in terms of my own time, but it gave the person the experience of seeing and collaborating and working with, or as we'd say now, pairing on how you actually solve the problem with someone who had some capability. And so you get a kind of organic learning from pairing. And one thing I sort of want to bring in is the potential in knowledge work for peer-to-peer coaching, mentoring, collaborating. It can all smoosh together if you can get those pairing, mobbing, collaborating things working well. Although often they don't out of the box. So that's another layer of if that's not happening, how do you help make them work, or as Andrew might say, debug the collaboration as you might debug a program. What I was going to say before, though, was that if you want to get really good at listening, check out Nancy Klein with a K, her books, Time to Think, which begin with Time to Think, and there are others, and they're brilliant. That reading and then doing some training in that approach was quite profound. I think she raises the art of listening to another level, and it's quite learnable.
I also wanted to maybe jump back to the kind of asking them questions and encouraging them to work it out themselves. The style doesn't work. You might change the style depending on their level of experience as well. So this is going back to kind of changing your leadership style depending on what the needs of the person are. So whereas you might actually, show them, like maybe a more junior engineer, you'd show them the first time because they have no reference to kind of learn this for themselves. But someone with a lot more experience, you just kind of give them some hints, or not in a, this feels very manipulative, but like they need less support. So you would kind of ask questions to get them to the answer, and it might not be the answer that you had in mind. As Dan said, like could be a different outcome, but supporting them to work out what the answer is, and yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to just touch on that point about manipulation there, Loren, because I think there's often this feeling, especially those of us who come from this knowledge work in the technology industry, there can often be this fear or this aversion to the idea of trying to change somebody's mind and trying to say things and be a little bit sneaky. And this is often one of the things that come up. I do a lot of training and coaching on things like communication and influence, and how do you be influential in the things you do. And without fail, one of the questions that crops up every single time I do this is, aren't you just teaching us how to manipulate people? And my response is always the same, which is manipulation goes back to intent. If you're trying to help somebody and you can look in the mirror and genuinely say the reason you're doing what you're doing is to make their lives better, then it's not manipulation. It's persuasion, or it's helping them see the breadcrumbs and pick them up. And I think that's the mentality. If you ever get that kind of icky feeling of am I manipulating somebody, just ask and answer that question. Can you truly say you're doing this for their best interests? And if you can, then give yourself a pass, because you're helping them, and that's the goal you want to achieve.
Can we come back to the earlier question, because I think there's a nice segue out of that, where Andrew G said more their attitude in terms of coaching people who are difficult. I think there's a lot to unpack, and I'd like to go into a conversation about it. But I think one thing that I learned out of some experiences of studying facilitation, working with groups, I thought I was learning facilitation to help people collaborate better. And the first style of facilitation I did some in-depth training on was called integral facilitation, or is still called integral facilitation. And the showpiece of the teacher was about facilitating navigating conflict, which seemed to me like higher level than collaboration. But then looping around again, when people seem difficult or have a bad attitude or whatever, if you can actually start to unpack things, often there's some kind of underlying conflict going on. And until that can be raised up and worked with effectively, it's going to be like, there may be passive aggressive behavior. It may be that there's undiscussables or the elephant in the room, and like we're just sort of skirting around the issues. And this sort of, I guess, again, another modern notion is one of psychological safety. Okay, I think something different from Loren. We've got, diametrically opposed versions to coaching. Just kidding, but like, just for the sake of argument, can we actually just get it out there and talk about it rather than trying to manipulate each other, and start to get to a place where we can have an adult and equitable conversation, and eventually, hopefully, start to move forward and certainly clear the air and feel better about our relationship, despite our grave differences.
Yeah, I like that. I was doing a talk literally last night at the Melbourne Cocoa Heads meetup on conflict. And the way that I think about it is, not all conflict is bad. Some conflict is good. But the way you define the difference between healthy and unhealthy conflict are those things you were talking about. Is there psychological safety between the group, and other things such as assumed positive intent? Are you assuming that the other person is trying to do bad work, or are you assuming that they're trying to do good work? They just want to go about it a different way to you. And the third thing being aligned or misaligned goals. If you've got people who are trying to achieve different end states, often that can lead to an unhealthy conflict as well. Cool. We've got a question from John. I think back to all the pairing and sitting side by side with my mentors back in my career. I feel like remote junior devs aren't getting the same level of serendipitous learning. Any tips for mitigating that, Loren?
Yeah, absolutely. I am feeling exactly the same as John as well in the last few years. I think encouraging a pairing culture it may not work for everyone. It's definitely something that is depending on people's comforts levels. But so introducing it is still helpful. But I think introducing it slowly over time is possibly a way to, I guess, not get discouraged in kind of this remote culture. Something that I've been doing lately is trying to make excuses and not make excuses so much, but I've been pairing with my coaches, just kind of if a problem comes up and we need to debug. It might be just ad hoc during a one-on-one or something. I'm like, oh, what are you working on? And they're like, oh, I just found this bug. I'm like, oh, cool. Can we look at that together? I'm really curious and want to like learn, dive in together and learn a bit more. I'm relatively new to the code base as well. So I want to learn more about this part of the code base. Like, can you share screen and we talk through it and I will demo kind of how I debug as well. So kind of just looking for little opportunities to sneak it in just with yourself. I don't know much about kind of encouraging pairing remotely, but encouraging folks to kind of do Zoom calls or huddles if they want to debug a problem together or talk about a problem together is seems to be something that is a good start. But yeah, currently my team is not pair programming, but they're still doing amazing work. So. But I do come from a very strong pair programming culture back at ThoughtWorks, so it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
if that answers the question.
I agree. With John's question, I think the loss of serendipitous learning is potentially a huge problem, and I think for that reason, as with Loren's past experience at somewhere like ThoughtWorks, where I've never worked, but making it part of the culture helps get over the barrier of feeling that I need permission to do something which may seem counterintuitive. Failing that, I'm a huge fan of, just as Loren says, just doing as much as you can, especially if people are working at like that coach or engineering manager level, and encouraging more of it, to experiment with it, whether doing it reactively in response to debugging or proactive. Hey, this story or epic seems hard. Maybe we should spend some time collectively on this. Let's make that part of our workflow, and during every sprint, put in some time and then adjust how much time is spent mobbing or pairing or whatever. My sense is we're sort of sliding back because there's this emotional barrier around asking for help, whereas the serendipitous learning is great because you can just learn organically without going over that. Oh crap! I feel dumb asking all these questions. So I think it's a kind of how do we design the kind of culture and rituals, habits, etc., in an intentional way. And also, I work for Everest, which is a remote first company, and we benefit from saying we will never force anyone to the office, because that means we can attract great people from lots of places. But we do like coming together and working a bit. Hence, I'm in the office today, even though I'm on a remote call. So I think it's a sort of a level up kind of thing about being intentional when we can be together, and if not, making best use of and learning our way in trying out different virtual environments. Yeah.
I want to reinforce something you just said about this idea of feeling like you're bothering somebody. One of the big problems I've seen, especially with juniors and working remote, is it's you know, if you're physically near a junior that you're coaching or mentoring, it's really easy for you to get a sense of, are they just spinning their wheels, or you know, are they making progress? And juniors quite often, because they have this aversion to bothering senior people, in inverted commas, they tend to not reach out for help as often as we might like. One of the things that I found successful, which works well for remote but same time zone. So this might not work well for you, John. I know your team is globally distributed. Using tools like GatherTown. So GatherTown is quite a cute, quirky, synchronous kind of Zoom type chat type thing. But basically, it's like an old 2D RPG. And the idea is that you model a map on that, and that map might have private areas for you to go and work in, and it might have public areas for you to kind of be a bit more public in. And the barrier to entry to saying to a junior, just and the way that the voice chat works is it works based on proximity. So if you walk your avatar over to somebody else's avatar, you will just magically start a voice call with them and be able to hear them. This works really well for breaking through some of those barriers, because you don't have to organize a Zoom call or say to them on Slack, hey, can we have a huddle? You literally just walk your 2D avatar over to their 2D avatar and start talking. And it helps break through some of those barriers of not wanting to disturb people. Of course, that doesn't work with multi-time zone. Yeah, exactly. John's just kind of saying what I said. I tell mine to bother people if they're stuck for 30 minutes. Not that they always do. That's exactly the point I'm making. It's quite a it's quite a simple problem. Yeah, it looks exactly like RPG Maker. It's I used it very successfully quite a few times in different companies. We've got a question from Owen. Suggestions for encouraging team members to develop more skills. They may have a fixed mindset, feel like they don't need to learn new things or expand skills, even though the role might require it. This is interesting, because we started but all three of us are members of the CTO School Slack. Loren and I are organizers. There was actually a debate or a discussion that started in the CTO School Slack on exactly this topic, this idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So I'm going to throw to Dan straight away, because I can guess that you've got some thoughts on this. Oh, I think you're still muted, Dan.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, I have thoughts, and I appreciate the irony of all the advice giving that we're doing when talking about mentoring and coaching. But sometimes it's good to have to just let the fire hose go. So there is some good stuff to look into. I'm sure this has been discovered many times. I think from Dan North of BDD fame on skills liquidity. But I'll just give a sort of paint a little picture. So say you're in a team and you've got a particular project, or if you're a consultancy client, then there is this question of, do we as a team have the skills to accomplish our immediate goals? So this is the short-term focus, which requires very little justification. So you can do a sort of a fun interactive grid activity where together you look at what are the skills we think we need to get to success in our immediate project, product, whatever situation. And for people to crudely self-rate themselves as, hey, I've got no idea about this, I'm okay, maybe this is 1, 2, 3, or 3, actually I'm pretty good, right? I'm not too worried about lying, because if you're working as a team, you'll be found out fairly quickly. Even if you underrate yourself, people go, hang on, why do you underrate yourself? And then you can, if you in this grid, you can look at so this is telling us about people's self-assessed skills within the current context. As a team, what skills are missing, or where are we relying on one person, and maybe we need to spread that out. Or we've even, evolved this exercise to who's taking on leadership in this area, and maybe that's a point where other people can take the pressure off the usual suspect, even if they're not terribly familiar with whatever it is. The skill could be around, I don't know, what's the new cool thing? Prompt engineering at the moment. Maybe no one's got an idea, and we'll need to call in an expert. But someone's particularly interested and they'd like to take it up, and so then you can go from here's the as is state to where we want to go. So that's one thing, and I think that's a pretty easy sell, both in terms of, hey, there's opportunity here, we need it to succeed as a group, and it's going to be easy to sell to our stakeholders as well. Then you can also go off into longer term things like, well, what about career building? And is this something I should be doing in my own time? Or is there a serendipitous aspect where a bit of, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20% time of people just mucking around is good, and to link it up to some of the other things and that they can do collaboratively? Maybe if those things, some of those learnings will serendipitously come back in, and that could be more targeted to career things, but also, and I like this framing of David Clutterbuck, who's a guru on coaching teams. You can frame team and individual learning about what do we need to do to stay ahead of the curve as a team and as an individual. So I think there's plenty of motivation there coming out of the extrinsics, not before you even go to other more formal mechanisms. So that's sort of my dump on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks. Owen, you're talking my language. I think, when I do a lot of training, often people will come to it with fixed mindsets, and one of the things I often say to clients before they engage me is what extrinsic motivators do you have to encourage people to engage in the training? Because a lot of people will be intrinsically motivated to engage in this kind of stuff. They want to get better. People often in our industry, people are professionals. They enjoy creating software. They enjoy doing their job, and so they want to get better at it. And so they are intrinsically motivated. But sometimes you do come across those people who are either fixed mindset or need to be extrinsically motivated. And in those situations, having things like career development frameworks, position descriptions, et cetera, they can really, really help with motivation in that space. If somebody feels like what they're doing is in their best interests, they're going to be more motivated to do it than if they don't. Lorraine?
Yeah, just to add to that, I guess the opportunities to definitely the growth career framework. I think I'm very fortunate that I haven't recently come across a fixed mindset individual. Everyone who I work with is just, we're all continuously learning, not fast enough. But I guess some possible things to try is like, how structured are your one-on-ones? That's where most of my growth and skills expansion conversations happen, and in around I guess the kind of performance review check-ins as well. We do it via Culture Amp, but the coaches have an opportunity to reflect on themselves and think about where they want to grow personally. So and then using that to constantly like iterate on like day to day what they're working on, finding opportunities, and also giving feedback, like having that opportunity to give feedback. Growth is also can be very small level as well. Like you can, in your one-on-ones, you can give them something to work on or give feedback on something that they can do better at a very kind of granular level. So maybe, I don't know if sometimes I've found maybe people think there's a fixed mindset as in they don't want to follow the ambitious software engineer wants to run their own company, be a CTO career mindset, that they might relate that to fixed mindset, don't want to learn anything new. It doesn't sound like the case here, but sometimes it's that, like they just want to grow differently in a different direction or more slowly. And that is totally fine. And as long as they're a net positive on the team, then yeah, absolutely encourage that and support them, I think. And another thing is helping to expand the team's knowledge, something that I'm doing recently is called a deep dive, and in particular in our team is accessibility. So putting aside some time to force ourselves to sit down and not do work, even though we've got deadlines and stuff, and learn that way. Have a chunk of time to learn a bunch of new things together, discuss it as a team, and also in the one-on-ones, like encouraging personal development and training as well, like actually giving them a training course. If that is where they want to grow, it makes sense to give them the training course on that particular topic. Maybe a few ideas that could help with this situation, hopefully.
Yeah, I like that idea of being very guided to help people get over that kind of hurdle of starting to learn, and you know, rather than saying you've got a training and development budget, use it on a training course. Which training course do you want to do? Going, no, actually go on this training course, and that can often help with the inertia of getting over it. I think that's a great idea. Comment from Peter, something that helps buy-in is knowing how they're learning can impact their career, but also the current team's projects. Yep, totally valid point, Peter. Again, if people are not intrinsically motivated, how can you tie the things that they want to the learning that you want them to go through? You know, if they want to get promoted to mid-level or senior or lead or staff or principal, how can you tie learning and development into that in some way is really powerful. A question from Peter. So Peter's asking a question about remote work and the bonds can be harder doing that. Everybody here will fill you with that, Peter. We last 2 weeks ago, I think we did a whole live stream on exactly this topic. If you look in Tech Leaders Launchpad at the events page, we spent an hour discussing exactly this topic, and actually John Sherwood was one of our co-presenters there talking about this. John runs an international company across many different countries and shared his benefits and experience. We also had Nicola Nye, who most recently was chief of staff at Fastmail, who also have an international workforce. So that was a great discussion there on the challenges and opportunities of remote work. So there's just to kind of finish where we are with this, and to start, I cannot believe that we are rapidly coming to the end of this hour. This has just really been incredibly quick. And last question that I want us to touch on is how can we find time for learning versus outside pressure? We know that it's what we need to do, but we're getting all of these outside things telling us we should be doing other stuff. We should be delivering features. We should be delivering for clients. It's going to be really interesting, the different perspectives here. Loren, Canva is obviously a SaaS company, and Dan, Everest is a consultancy. Completely different pressures and motivations there. So I'm genuinely curious what your different answers are. Dan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's harder in a consultancy because of you've got the client. Our frontline people are in a kind of a dual context of a particular client who can often be very demanding, and part of Everest as well. I think that you just got to build in time for learning. A former colleague of mine said that for his IT career, he managed to do 3 hours of learning every day within work. Now that might have been partly figuring out the current tech stack or whatever, so it was justifiable. And he was a really top performer and coach and mentor. So there's this question, right, between 0 and 100% time, how much time do you reserve for learning? For junior people, this may be very hard for them to push back on. So I think this is one which can be helped with a bit of structure. And then the secondary thing is to make good use of it. Otherwise, it becomes an active rebellion to carve out that bit of time for yourself. So our ideal, which isn't always reached, is something like an hour a day being available. Of course, if there's an emergency on that, it does get soaked up. But if you're always soaking it up, then it's too easy to push it out. So that hour a day, and then the pitch to the clients needs to be, this is what this is a win-win for you as well, because it will help with the uplift of your team members when they're included. Our people keep learning, that helps them get motivated and learn stuff which will help you as well as helping others. It is a beneficial process, but it can be a bit countercultural. So there's some communication around expectations to clients as well as working with the teams. But yeah, always wanting to do better on this one.
I can relate back to my consultancy days too, Dan. I think when we were between clients, that was ultimately the time to try and learn and catch up on stuff that you thought, I need to learn about this and set it aside for later. And I've also worked somewhere that kind of who had consultants, but they made sure there was a back to home day on Fridays, and that would be a non-client day, and that would be a day for learning. I thought that was really cool, even though I wasn't a consultant myself there. In terms of, I guess, at a product company, which is again new for me. There, I think, is making there's a bit more, I guess, buffer to make the time to learn, because it's how you eventually ship faster and do your job better. So making that time, and I think, for example, like time blocking the deep dive to introduce new things to the team and learn as a team, but also individually. Like we're all learning on the job. So there's that kind of level of learning, like learning while you're doing, and maybe you have a bit more, less of a time stress to like deliver without kind of diving more into something that's new to you. So you do the research, you read the manual, you might dive into it down rabbit holes a little bit more, because it does pay back. And I think Canva at large, that would be a big part of their culture, investing in learning as well. Like there's been no pushback of like, okay, we have someone who maybe is new to accessibility, here is a course, they're managing their own learning. It's very autonomous. They're like, I'm going to do this course for X hours a day and until I finish it, and that is all well and good. It's something that you work together with your coaches on, to balance, I guess, the needs of the team at the time and the benefits that it brings as well. So something, just a conversation, but honestly, it's left to the individual's responsibility and autonomy to know what's best in terms of priorities. So
great, thank you. I cannot believe this hour is up so quickly. Thank you so much, Loren and Dan, for joining me. Your experience and wisdom, as always, has been incredibly useful for me. I hope it's been useful for everybody else joining us. The next event we're going to have is in a couple of weeks' time on the 24th of November. John Sherwood will be back, and we'll also be joined by Susan Brander, who's CTO at Collider. We're going to be talking about balancing autonomy and process, which segues great from what you just said, Loren. How do you get the balance between those two things? So thank you, everybody, for joining us on the live stream. Thank you for your questions. Sorry for those of you who we didn't get to your questions. Hopefully we can spend some time having a bit of asynchronous discussions about the questions we didn't get to. And we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Loren. Thanks, Andrew.
thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Happy Friday.